Hello there, and welcome to Dr. Teach Me to Parent. Glad you're joining us again today as we have a great program for you as we look at the topic of training kids in the home to be leaders. Leadership training in the home. And the quote that puts this into perspective is there on the screen for you as home is where leadership is learned. Parents are the teachers. And really what that kind of brings us to the topic that, leadership isn't just something that emerges. You aren't born as a leader or whatever, but it's learned, and it's a learned behavior, a learned set of behaviors, but it's learned in the home. And you as the parent teach your child to become a leader or a type of leader or a format of leaders or not a leader at all. And to guide us in our discussion today, we have Dr. Rich KRIEGBAUM, who is the past president of the Fresno Pacific University. In fact, you were president twice.
Yes, I was.
I think when you left presidency one time, you either got lonely and went back, or they got lonely and they invited you back. But anyway, you had two experiences as being president of Fresno Pacific.
Yes.
And in the process of that, you wrote a book and titled Leadership Prayers. And you just gave me a copy, and I appreciate that, very much. But this book is an important book. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. The prayers of leaders and the types of prayers that leaders, and maybe some ideas that might come from that, for you. So we're going to come back to that in just a moment, and it's a great book, so I appreciate having a copy of that. And also, let me just bring to your attention the course that we have written now entitled Parenting Better. This is an online course for parents to learn to be better parents. And a good book or a good outline and online course for beginning parents and experienced parents and grandparents and those that really want to be in a parenting role but do it better. And it's available through Fresno Pacific University in their online program, and the address is there at the bottom that you can access the course. So I bring that to your attention and welcome you to participate in your own personal training in parenting. Now, let me ask you, Rich, this idea about your book. Come back to that. The idea of prayers of leaders. The question that I have is, do leaders pray more than anybody else? Do they pray differently than anybody else, or are there prayers just like the garden variety prayers that we all offer, throughout our life, or do they pray at specific times and not other times? I mean, did you get any feel for that as you were thinking of leadership and prayers and putting that together?
Yes. I don't know that leaders in their leadership roles during their times of leadership pray necessarily more. I think the fact of experiencing or being in a leadership role does create a particular focus for your prayers because you are so often praying for other people.
I see. So type of prayer,
for other situations.
Yeah.
And it is the essence of leadership that you live making a lot of mistakes. Alan, that's just what leadership requires you to be able to do.
And live with that and tolerate that.
And that affects your prayer life also. When you know there's no perfection in what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. When you're seeking to do God's will in God's kingdom, you have to accept that if you're going to get anything done, you have to deal with imperfection, your own to start with. And I think that does frame your prayers.
I see. So it kind of motivates it, number one.
Yes.
Kind of stimulates
you feel
it or
a great
encourages
need
it. And then
for wisdom that's beyond you.
So the type of prayer is very, very specific.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
for a leader.
It is.
You know, and often it might sound self-centered, but what you just seem to indicate, though, that a prayer of a leader might be more about themselves, but to be encouraged or to be challenged or to
Yes.
take a different course or to take a certain decision or whatever that wouldn't naturally occur.
Most of us tend to pray about our own personal situation. Leaders pray about a situation that affects a whole lot of other people.
Yourself and a lot of other people.
Yourself and a lot of other people. And they're going to be depending on you to have found God's wisdom for you in that situation.
Is that right? Uh-huh. So it is. So they are different. So this is a great book. So if you are a leader, and if you have any form of leadership opportunity or position in the community or in your church or wherever, but you are a parent, so therefore you're a leader, this is a book that might be very helpful to you and give you some kind of structure and some kind of guidance in terms of how you pray.
It may seem a bit humorous, but I've had a lot of people say, I never read that book, but I was working under a leader who I thought really needed that book, so I gave him the book.
Gave him the book. So what happened in your life that brought you into a position of leadership? I mean, here you are, president of university. I mean, that we would consider that to be leadership. So what happened in your early life, in your training, your home, that kind of structured your life to be a leader? Because you've been a leader in a lot of different situations, not just university. I mean, you've done this in all your life in many, many situations. So there had to be something, somebody.
Mostly my dad.
I would think that would be a
And
fairly
that's
common
not
answer.
uncommon at all, that it was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a lot of leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's despite the fact that he came out of a home where his father told my dad, you will never amount to anything.
Oh,
And he repeated that regularly.
really?
And my dad had to overcome
that.
and even get enough courage to go after high school, go to college, which he did, graduate college, finish seminary, went into ministry. So church leader was his first real leadership responsibility. It was a church leadership.
Yeah.
Then, not long after I grew up in Iowa, Cedar Rapids and Waterloo, where my dad was a pastor there. But from that second, when he got called to a denominational leadership role with the denomination, that took him into organizational leadership of a different kind.
Sure.
And then from then, later third in his life, he was the dean at the denominational college and seminary. And that was yet a different kind of
Different
leadership.
type of all, yeah.
All during my life, we were at our table talk.
Yeah.
Alan was always about what
So
he
you
was
saw your
dealing
dad
with.
in a leadership role in all these
Yeah,
different
he
over
was
all the
always
years.
talking about it.
Uh-huh.
And we discussed those things at
So
our
you kind
table.
of, it was by like osmosis. I mean,
Yes.
you kind of picked it up as you just were living it.
Yes.
As he was living it.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So it
But that
was
must have been
pretty
a
natural
terrible
that I
thing for
moved
him to
into that.
overcome. I mean, he
Yeah.
had to overcome this negativism. You'll never amount to anything. I mean,
You
we
know?
might say, okay, we can joke about that and say that was negative motivation, but
I was a beneficiary of that, so were my brother and sister. My mom had a version of that also. And when they got married, they made a compact with each other that if God blessed them with children, they would always support and encourage their children and never tell them that they couldn't do it.
do the opposite of what.
Do the opposite.
what your
But
dad
they had to
experienced.
overcome that negativity, and
Yeah.
they did that. They always encouraged us, always told us, you can do this. So that's sort of...
Did that ever come into your mind, though? Did that ever kind of filter into your mind a little bit every once in a while that, maybe I can't do this? Maybe I'm not capable.
All
Maybe
the
I really
time.
don't have that ability.
all the time, Alan. Of course.
I mean, that's a natural thought once in a while, but
Yeah.
but because your dad was kind of trained in that idea to
Yes.
start with, you and had to overcome it. I wonder if that almost filtered into your life a little bit too.
My dad spent his entire working career overcoming that nagging voice inside of him that was telling him, you can't do this. He worked
There you
so
are.
hard to make sure that I didn't have that when that voice would rise in me, he had he had, by model and by principle, he had taught me. That is the voice of someone who is trying to not do God's will.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that.
Yeah.
God is calling
Kind
you.
of have a phrase of that. Kind of that's the devil speaking.
That's exactly what it came
Yeah.
across as. So don't listen to that.
Yeah.
And I watched my dad through his whole career struggle to overcome that in his own life, and he did, but it always nagged at him.
I think
and
so.
my brother and sister
think
and
so.
I do not have that.
Those early experiences are very profound.
I think it proves a parent can undo the negativity in their life, and they can do it better at the next generation.
But deliberately, you got
They
to
have
plan
to
to do
work
it.
at
You
it.
have to kind of do.
He was very
determine.
aware of it,
Uh-huh.
and so was my mom, and they worked together to overcome that and not let that happen to their kids.
But it's in there.
Yes.
But it's just there, and you have to. It's a battle all your life.
Yep.
It's interesting that you saw that in your dad, and then how that influenced you.
Yes.
You know, to not walk that path.
Yes.
But it's there, isn't it? It's like a family trait, like a family mark. That sometimes you just have to make sure you ignore or overcome or.
I remember a very specific event because you asked about this a little bit ago. I was strong-willed and always wanted to win at everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's also not unusual in people who end up going into leadership.
That's right.
But I tended to lose my temper when I didn't get my way, when I didn't win.
When you didn't win. Mm-hmm.
And I remember one specific time on a weekend afternoon. It had been a pickup little football game with kids in the neighborhood, and it didn't go my way. And I was literally on the ground having a tantrum as a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad came up to me
I've seen that.
and tried to get me to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I foolishly said, "Well, Dad, you lose your temper sometimes." And there was a pause. And he said, "You're right, son, I do. I'm going to change, and you need to also."
Wow.
And he
That was
did,
profound.
Alan.
That was a profound moment.
It was, I have never
That came out of a
forgotten
10-year-old
that
mouth,
moment.
huh? I mean,
He
just-
was humble enough to say, "You're right."
Yeah.
He didn't whip me or anything for being disrespectful.
Sure.
He said, "You're right. I'm going to change, but you need to also."
You know, that was your first mark of leadership.
Yes.
Right there. When,
Look,
when
yes.
you led your father to a different path.
Yes.
So that was
And-
your real first step of leadership.
Yes.
You may didn't know it.
Yes.
You didn't
It
think
really
about
was.
it that way, but it had that effect, didn't it?
And I have talked to a lot of people in leadership. They can remember as a child
Yeah.
when that started to happen in their lives.
That's right. There's always an incident.
Yeah. Often an incident.
There's an incident of some kind of a trauma, you know, some kind of upset. I mean,
Yes.
it isn't just kind of a flow of the wind.
Yes.
There's a marker,
Right.
and that was your marker.
It happens.
And then you proceeded.
But parents have a key role in how they respond to that.
Well, that's my
Alan.
point. Parents are the
Boy.
teachers.
My dad could have
Parents are the
ruined that
teachers.
moment for
Yeah,
me,
Yeah.
and he did not. God led him, and he was a. he
You know,
was
often a
humble
parent doesn't
person.
really know that they're teaching a kid something at the point in time.
Right.
Maybe that's not their purpose or their intent, but
That's right.
something they say, something they do has that impact, and it
Yep.
leads to a leadership thought pattern or
Exactly.
behavior pattern in their children.
Yes.
But I think that parents really are the teachers.
Yes,
They do it
they
deliberately and they do it surreptitiously and not for certain. But
Right.
yeah. So let me ask you this question, because we've been talking about leadership. How do you define it? I mean, what is the concept of leadership? I mean, we have this kind of idea that somebody who's out in front, you know, somebody who has this powerful personality that talks to crowds and groups of people, and that's maybe a style of leadership,
That
a
is
form of it.
one
But
form
I
of
mean, what's
leadership.
the undergirding idea of leadership?
Well, you're right about one thing. There is not one standard, always applicable definition of leadership. In fact, one study counted 120 different working definitions of leadership.
No kidding.
And I'm
120
sure there's
definitions.
more than that.
We're
There's
not going to
more.
take time to go through those.
But
what's the concept
if
of
you
that?
boil it all back
Yeah.
down, the one that the scholars that I have, the analysts that I have come to trust the most, they have come to agree that if you take it back down from all of the variations to what's core in all of that, this will sound so simple, but this is really, I think, profound. The definition of leadership is the existence of followership. And the definition of a leader is a person who has followers. And there's a humorous version of that. It's that if you think you're leading and no one's following, you're actually just taking a walk by yourself.
That's right.
That's
right.
That's the fundamental definition of leadership, is you have followers. What people tend to miss at that point is that makes following extremely important.
Yeah.
And that means followers are the ones who decide who they're willing to follow and not follow.
Determine, yeah.
And that's what makes a person a leader, is someone is following you.
I had a friend one time who was a leader, and we asked him about that very question about how does he know he's a leader. He said, I just look behind myself.
That's right.
He said, look behind. Is there anybody back there?
That's right.
I mean, it's that concept of
Right.
if you don't have followers, you're not a leader.
There's another word for it that I think is very broad, but it's very core. It applies all the time. The word is influence.
Okay.
A leader is a person who has influence in the life of somebody else. Okay. You've done a lot of counseling. You can only counsel a person who is willing to let you have influence in their lives. If they shut you off from
Then
that,
you're
dead.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen, right?
Yeah, right. You may have a conversation,
But that
interaction,
makes
but
you
nothing.
a leader in their life. But it's the follower's decision to let a person have influence. Now, alongside influence is often the word power. And that's another form of leadership. It is leadership. It's not in most cases the preferred, but there are situations where power is also how a person leads. But power turns out to be a form of influence in a person's life.
Sure it is. But doesn't powerful leaders start with bully behavior?
Yes.
I mean that might look like bully behavior
Often.
as a young child. I mean, maybe these bully kids, what they're doing is really leading, but in a very negative, hurtful, aggressive way. But there's an undercurrent of it. They're providing some influence on somebody else.
That's a key point. Leadership is not inherently good or bad.
That's my point.
It can be either one.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
Leadership can be either noble or evil. It can be either health-making or toxic. There are books that have come out of the followership literature about what makes toxic leaders attractive. And there's good research on exactly what causes that to happen.
And we have a host of toxic leaders in our
more.
world. I mean,
But
at all levels, church, the politics, the school
But
teachers.
that only happens,
on down the line.
when a person decides they will follow that toxic leader.
Yeah.
You cannot be a leader without followers, and every leader has to have followers who approve of and support that person.
Do you think
It's
that,
a terrible concept,
Do you think
but it's
leaders,
true.
though, kind of influence the way the followers behave, or is it the other way around? Do you think the followers kind of influence the leader to become toxic or to become more toxic?
They find each other.
I'm wondering if there's kind of interaction,
They
play there.
find
Yeah.
each other. And a toxic follower, a follower who is willing to support
A toxic behavior.
a toxic leader is getting something from that toxic leader that they value more than all the other things. And we see that in politics a lot.
Oh, yes.
Political leadership is often somebody wants something particular. We call them special interests. It's a nice word for you. I want something for me.
That's right.
And if you'll give that to me,
Yeah.
then I'll put up with a lot of really bad stuff in you because you're going to give me the one thing I want. That does not produce the greatest kind of leadership for the healthiest kind of organization.
No. But it
But
does.
it happens a lot.
But it happens. In fact, there's a research study showing that of the presidents that have come down over the years, and good, bad, or whatever, have had a general pattern of narcissism.
Yes.
Kind of self-centered,
Very common.
powerful, very, very strong leaders, opinionated,
Yes.
one way, my way. That makes a president. Unfortunately, we've had that all through the years. You can't say this is one president or another president. They've all been like that.
Well, Alan, if it's comforting to parents, I'm going to confess right now that I did a full diagnostic test under a counselor.
Sure.
And he told me who I was.
Sure.
You won't be surprised that it came out narcissistic histrionic.
That's what it does. Leaders are.
So,
Yeah.
and he said, however, he said, those can go in a very toxic direction.
Yes.
Or those can be transformed and molded and used as strengths to get something good done in the lives of other people. But you are still dealing with that underlying pattern.
And you've got to control that.
And
You've got to be on top of that.
And going back to prayers, you pray for the Holy Spirit of God to moderate those bad tendencies and transform them into something good that'll be good in other people's lives. But narcissistic, histrionic, I'm sitting in any kind of room
Yeah.
and I catch myself saying, what would happen if I had to stand up and speak right now? What would I say? And I'm almost always ready. I don't always stand up.
Sure.
An unhealthy narcissist will stand up and take over.
No matter what.
No
Yes,
matter
that's
what.
Right. That's right. That's right. But
God-
there's control. I mean, it's
So-
like control leadership. You can force your way upon people. You can lead them into paths of unrighteousness, if you will.
Yes.
As compared to in paths of righteousness. I mean, you're capable of doing both.
I was with a mother recently, and her 1.5-year-old was really acting pretty badly, and she said, "I apologize. This is really a strong-willed child." I said, "God bless it.
Yeah.
If you are the kind of parent you need to be,
Yeah.
that strong-willed child
that's
can
right.
do great things in God's kingdom."
You know, there's a lot of evidence of that.
Yes.
Strong-willed children are upsetting and tough
She
to
took
raise,
only a
but
little
if you
bit
do
of-
it well,
She was only slightly comforted by what I said.
yeah, that doesn't solve the problem for me now today, does it? But you got to have that kind of view. I think as a parent, you got to have that view that what my child is becoming, and what my child would likely become, or what I want them to become, and what they're
You-
capable of coming.
Let me follow on what I call the problematic proverb. It's exactly what you just talked about. It's a very common one. It's Proverbs 22:6. I'm going to read it in 3 different translations.
All right.
Here we go. Teach your children to choose the right path, and when they are older, they will remain upon it.
Okay, so the concept there is to teach.
Teach. But the promise is, if you get them living a moral life in the beginning, then they will remain that
And they'll-
way.
and-
And the problem is, we've seen a lot of people where that doesn't happen, and so that's a problem.
That's a problem.
There's another translation tried to get around that. Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it.
Okay, so the concept there is not teaching, but training.
But training. So you've
a whole
mentored,
different-
you walked alongside, but it's in the way he should go. Now, that way he should go, I think, is key language. There's a third one, the Message. That second one was NIV. The third one is from the Message. Point your kids in the right direction, and when they're old, they won't be lost.
Okay, so the concept
that's
there is
another
to
concept
it's more
of it.
passive, isn't it?
Yes.
Point your kid.
Yes.
This is the way to go,
when
but
they're
I'm
lo-
not going there myself.
But I take all those 3, and here's what I think. And then Peggy and I were together listening. We were on a vacation, and we were listening to a speaker, a well-known radio and TV speaker. And he said he'd come up with what he thought was a different interpretation of Proverbs 22:6.
Oh yes.
Use the words teach and train and point. Put those together and say, if you help the child figure out who they really are and what God had in mind for them, and you develop that, then when the person is older, they will move into who they really were intended by God to be. And that, to me, that pulls together these concepts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's the healthiest
Yeah.
version of what I think that
I like the
verse means.
concept to help the child. I
Yes.
mean, there's a partnership there.
Help the child
Yeah.
figure out who they really are,
Yeah.
and that's what God intended for you to be. And God has a purpose for you the way he made you. So
a
find out
parent
who
has to
you
do
really
some
are.
pretty deep thinking then.
Yes.
A parent has to kind of think, okay,
Yes.
now what is likely to be this child's not only ability and
Yes.
capabilities, but purpose?
But when
gotta
you're
think about that.
counseling with a parent and child having problems, isn't that a lot of what you're trying to do?
Well, of course you are, yeah.
You're trying to get a
Yeah.
healthy relationship there. The parent who tries to force their child into what the parent wants is going to distort that child from what God had in mind for that child.
That's right.
So the parent's prayer is, God, show me what you want my child to be
Become. And can become.
and can become.
Can become.
And help me be a parent
To bring that
or
together.
a teacher if
To
I'm
bring
in
that together.
school.
Yeah.
Help me do that.
Yeah.
Help me see what God had in mind for my child.
So the parent role is pretty profound.
Oh,
I mean, if you
you
think of
are-
it, I mean, it's not
that's
just
right.
pointing a kid,
yes.
you
right.
know, not just telling a kid. It's not just giving him some idea, you know, like teachers might do. But this is,
Walking with
this is
them.
walking with. This is
Yes.
kind of a partnership. This
Yes.
is really coming together.
Yes.
As parent and child, you got to spend time. You got to spend time with your kid.
That means the parent's going to ask a lot of, why did you do that?
You got to be talking to your kid.
Talk into
You got to
the
have
child.
that talking relationship. You got to
Tell
have
me
that
why you did that.
that together relationship, whether it's
Yeah.
playing or talking or whatever. But you got to be involved in your kid's life.
Was that the best way to handle that?
Well,
I remember.
question.
I remember hearing about a 35-year-old man once say, "You know, I remember I was outside. My job was to mow the lawn, and the lawnmower wouldn't work right. It wouldn't start, and I was using some pretty foul language on that lawnmower. And my dad came out and said." You know, I don't think that language is going to help that lawnmower get any better. Can we find a better way?
that's a wise parent.
Very
There was
wise
wisdom. There was some
parent.
wisdom because it teaches a point.
And
You know, you
that
can yell
may-
at something, or even
That's
you can
right.
yell at a kid.
Right.
You know, but that's not going to bring about any good.
Like my dad.
Yeah.
You can lose your temper.
There you can
and
lose your
it-
temper,
and
and
it
it can
doesn't
bring
help
about
at
any
all.
good.
But you can say, wait a minute. There's got to be a solution here. And you begin to be a logical, process-oriented problem solver
Yeah.
rather than someone who's just angry because things aren't going your way.
Mm-hmm.
Parents have to model that, Alan. That's what parents, when you're walking along, you're modeling. And
Say that again, because I think that's a profound statement. Because really what you're saying here is that a parent has a very specific task and needs to take that task pretty seriously, actually.
Yes.
But the task is what in the area of leadership? But the parent needs to...
Is trying to help the child find what God wants to do in the child's life.
as compared to what I want my child to become
Exactly.
or should become or whatever.
Exactly.
Because that's how we raise kids, is what I wasn't able to do, now my kid can do.
Yes.
Or because I did it, my kid needs to do it.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
we use our own self-reference.
Yes.
And you're saying that's not the way it goes.
What you want to understand as a parent is what God is doing in your life, the lessons you're learning with as you walk, and you're trying to help your child see that. When the key thing my dad said was he admitted his mistake.
Yes.
He said, "You're right, son.
That's
I do,
that's right.
and I'm going to work at that, and you need to also."
Yeah.
And from then on, we worked together.
Well,
at that.
then he became a team member.
And we were working
Yeah.
at both controlling our tempers, and that gets the energy going into something productive.
Yeah. Well, you're working together now. Now you're two on the same page.
I really think
Yeah.
that helped my dad move into greater and greater leadership roles. Mm-hmm. If you can't control those wrong instincts that you have, they will kill you as you try to lead.
Hey, we need to
Because-
take a break.
Yeah.
You've been working pretty hard here for a moment as a leader, but I think that's a good concept in terms of what a leader really is and what leadership is really all about. But when we come back, though, I want to kind of ask you kind of a general question in terms of kind of a progression from kindergarten on into college. There's got to be some kind of a process that leaders go through? Is it like they catch it at one particular point? Or is this just something that builds a little bit over time and gradually develops into what we call you become a leader? So there's got to be a kind of a process there. So think about that, and we're going to come back and get a cup of coffee, and we'll see you in a few moments.
The Green Gables Care Home is a 24-hour assisted living facility for the elderly located in Clovis, California, offering spacious private and semi-private rooms which are wheelchair approved, catering to the special person in your life who needs attention and wants to live in a loving home environment. The Green Gables Care Home has assisted living in secured homes for elderly with Alzheimer's, memory loss, and for your loved ones needing assistance with their activities of daily living. Call 559-297-9438 and visit greengablescarehome.com.
Sometimes good intentions hurt rather than help. For just $1.76 per meal, the Fresno Rescue Mission offers more than food. We offer hope. Please donate today.
Do you need a locksmith? Layman's Lock and Safe Service and Repair is available for you. 559-228-1805.
Gained a lot, learned a lot, and got a lot of love. If it weren't for the knowledge that I had gained from the classes at PCC, I probably wouldn't be the mom I am today. See, there it goes.
I would love you to meet my son, Aaron. My situation was very difficult. I didn't know how my life was going to turn out.
We graduated in June 2010, and we got married in July. And through family, the Pregnancy Care Center changed our lives.
The Pregnancy Care Center was a huge, vital part in helping me walk through that pregnancy, in educating me and loving on me during that time.
Choosing a Medicare plan can be difficult and frustrating. Susan Hatch can guide you through the Medicare maze and help find the right plan for you. Susan helps people understand the confusing and drastic changes that occur every year in Medicare. Susan will only recommend plans that will protect your assets and allow you to continue to see your personal doctor. As a 100% independent agent, Susan is not controlled by any particular insurance company to steer a person onto any one particular plan. Susan was awarded the #1 Medicare supplement agent in California. Look for Susan's Medicare question and answers every Monday in the Fresno Bee. Call Susan at 559-307-2287 and visit MedicareToday.net.
CentralValleyTalk.com